Today we're going to focus on equations that have two or more variables, and these are called literal equations. We're also going to be looking at formulas as well. When we rewrite literal equations, we may sometimes be dividing by a variable or a variable expression. And we have to assume that that variable is not equal to 0 because, as you know, division by 0 is undefined. So let's start with something you know how to do. You know how to solve an equation for a variable when it's in one variable format. You would first subtract 10 on both sides. That will then simplify to 2n is equal to negative 6. And you would divide by 2 on both sides, and your final answer would be n is equal to negative 3. That's easy. Now I'm going to transform this one step at a time by changing it. And if you notice in this first one, I've taken out the 10 and replaced it with a variable. I now have a literal equation. What will I do to solve for n? I'm going to use the same process. I'm going to first subtract both sides by p. That simplifies to 2n is equal to 4 minus p. Now I have one more inverse operation, and that inverse operation is to divide by 2. So I isolate n, I get n is equal to 4 minus p divided by 2. Now this can be simplified a little bit further as well, because this is a division here. I can divide and I can get n is equal to 2 minus p over 2. Okay, on to my second literal equation. You now may notice that I took out the coefficient and replaced that with a variable. This is another example of a literal equation. How will I solve it? Using the same format. I'm going to subtract p on both sides. That leaves me with m times n is equal to 4 minus p. To get n by itself, I'll divide both sides by m. So n is isolated, and that equals 4 minus p over m, where m does not equal 0, because otherwise it would be undefined. One last equation. I've now taken out all the numbers and replaced it with another variable. I am going to do the same process once again. I will subtract both sides by p. That leaves me with m times n is equal to r minus p. What will I do next? Divide by n. Dividing by m leaves me with n is equal to r minus p divided by m. And there you have a demonstration or an illustration of how we can take an equation in more than one variable and isolate for a particular variable. It doesn't have to be all letters or all variables. There could be a combination of numbers and variables. Let's look to see what this looks like in a word problem format. I'm going to start off by giving you a little situation here and ask you to do your best to solve this. Now, you're ordering pizzas and sandwiches, and you have a budget of $80. How many sandwiches can you buy if you buy 4 pizzas? Now, according to the menu, the pizzas cost $10 and the sandwich is $5. I'd like you to solve this and explain. When I ask you to explain, which I will be doing quite a bit of, you want to write a sentence or two explaining how you came about your answer. So do that now and you'll share in class. Now that you've had a chance to do it, I'm going to do it with another problem. I'm going to start by actually identifying my variables and setting up an equation. Maybe this is exactly the format that you used. I decided to use X for my number of pizzas and Y for the number of sandwiches. Since a pizza costs $10, 10X plus sandwiches cost 5Y equals my budget of $80. This is an important piece of information right there. Okay, so now let's forget about the 6 right now. Let's talk about the 3. I'm now going to use my model and I'm going to solve this problem. So how do I do this? I start off by rewriting this equation. I want to solve for y. I want to get y by itself. So I'm going to rewrite this. So I'm going to take my 10x plus 5y equals 80. And I want to get y by itself, so I'm going to first subtract 10x on both sides. I now have 5y is equal to 80 minus 10x. Let's continue. I'm going to divide both sides by 5. I'm isolating y. Y is equal to 16 minus 2x. Now that I've rewritten this, now I can go about substituting in 3. Y is equal to, and Y represents the number of sandwiches. The number of sandwiches is equal to 16 minus 2 times 3. Well, I've got 16 minus 6, so I can buy 10 sandwiches. I'm sorry, 10 sandwiches. It's good to have unit analysis so we know what it is we're looking at. And we can do the same thing with 6. Once we rewrite the equation, we can decide what we need to buy. Now, what if I wanted to do the reverse? I would have isolated x. And we'll look at some of those as well. So before we end the lesson today, I want to just look at a couple of these little equations, and I kept these all in variables. In the first one, I'm going to solve for a. In the second one, solve for d. And in the third one, solve for x. Try these, and we'll discuss them in class today. See you then.